I'm Connor and welcome back to another episode of Old Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be doing a combination episode, a bit of how the Golden Globe nominations, which were announced yesterday, which is why this video is coming out on Friday, how that will affect the Oscar race, as also doing the best adapted screenplay predictions, so we keep on moving this prediction trains forward. However, let's talk about the Golden Globes. Now just a bit of sort of background on how the Golden Globes really affect the Oscars. They only affect them in sort of minuscule amounts. They are two different sort of organizations, you call them. The Golden Globes is voted on by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, HFPA. There's only about sort of 80 or 90 members of them. Nobody really knows exactly who they are. In terms of sort of where they come from. They're not critics. They're not industry members. They don't make movies. They are sort of press, people who do junkets, things like that, and they vote. So it's a very small group compared to the academies, thousands, 3,000, 4,000. I'm not exactly the entire number because they're sort of growing internationally, but in terms of thousands of people, the academy has them beat, and there's no correlation. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association are not members of the academy, so really, for a lot of the campaigning, a lot of these actors can meet a lot of the Hollywood Foreign Press of people and get nominated at the Globes. However, in terms of our situation, there's very little correlation in terms of how they vote versus how the Oscars vote. I mean, they also separate in between sort of dramas and comedies, and there's different categories that they have that the Oscars don't, in terms of splitting that up. But what it is useful for is that it's a televised event. It is a big award show. People liken it similar to the Oscars. A lot of people maybe like it better than the Oscars because it's maybe a little less formal. Maybe some of their favorite movies get nominated a little more often because they have that comedy category. But for our sort of sake, it just has to do with momentum and who's getting out there, because Hollywood Foreign Press Association, I mean, if you're with them and dining with them and talking to them a lot, they will give you the vote. They will give you the nomination. So that really shows us who's campaigning, who's on the ground, who's really putting in an effort, and it also shows us a little bit of a lead as to what are the big contenders. And the big contenders overall, from what we've learned, is pretty much what I've been saying, what other people have been saying. A Star is Born and Green Book are up there, and definitely Roma. Roma was a foreign language film, so they couldn't get a Best Picture nomination, but it got in for director and screenplay. It didn't get in for Yalitza Aparicio for Roma, which I thought it would, so that may be a little bit of a knock against it. That being said, a movie like Star is Born really swept up, but it didn't do huge. It wasn't like La La Land, so it's not going to be sort of get that backlash, we don't think, because it got snubbed for someone like Sam Elliott. Screenplay didn't get in, so there are a couple categories that surprisingly didn't get in, so it wasn't sort of a huge sweep. But then sort of the main front runner, something like Green Book, surprised by getting in at director, and then got in everywhere else. And then The Favorite, surprisingly didn't get in for director, but got in for 2 supporting actress nominees for Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone. But really the big movies that we see big changes from, I think, in terms of the rising category, like we do every week, is Mary Poppins Returns. That's the very first one, and Black Klansman, I'd say, and then even Vice. Mary Poppins Returns, we've been hearing great things. I did say, I think last video, a couple of videos ago, in terms of the buzz, that this was a movie that was rising, that Emily Blunt, and people have heard really great things about it, and it's coming out at the right time. So beware of Mary Poppins Returns. And with this sort of Best Comedy Musical solidification, Emily Blunt solidification, because this is still in a comedy musical, it's hard to judge, if a movie like this can do well at the Oscars, because it's all the categories. But it did very well at the Globes. People really like it. The early screenings have been very positive. So I see a lot of tech categories actually at the Oscars for Mary Poppins, and I think right now the best chance to getting in of the big categories would be Emily Blunt for Best Actress. If you don't know, Mary Poppins actually does have a bit of a history at the Oscars. Julie Andrews, I believe, either won or got nominated, so it's not unusual for Mary Poppins to do well at the Oscars. And then Vice also did very well. It got in for someone like Sam Rockwell. It got in for actor and actress. He got in for director, even got in for screenplay. I mean, it's a major contender, and I think it's going to win at least one of those awards at the Globes. And I think that people are really enjoying this movie. They saw this movie, they really liked it. So this really bodes well for the Academy and the Oscars, and sort of my predictions of someone like Adam McKay getting for director at the Oscars. So very interesting things going on over there. Stay tuned for that, because I think Vice could be a late threat that's really challenging for Best Picture. Let's say maybe Mary Poppins Returns won't. But first, another movie that's done really well here at the Globes was Black Klansman. At the first sort of half of the show, I thought it was going to get left out because it got left out at what I thought was going to get it in, at least most likely, which was Adapted Screenplay. However, it did not. So I was like, oh no, it's probably not going to do very well, but then it maybe overperformed. It got in for John David Washington for Best Actor. It got in for Best Supporting Actor for Adam Driver. It got in for Best Picture. Spike Lee got Best Director nomination. So, I've been waiting all season to see how Black Klansman's really going to do because it's this August release, but they've been campaigning. John David Washington's going around, saying he's Denzel's son, sort of exuding that same sort of charm and charisma, and he's been working through really campaign ground, and so is Black Klansman, and so is Spike Lee with these Q&As and whatnot, and clearly it's been working out. With the Black Klansman, this really gave it sort of a much needed boost, and especially if they could win something. If John David Washington manages to pull out a surprise and win his category, and bring a great speech, I think that could really propel Black Klansman pretty far. So right now, Black Klansman, getting for picture as well, I think that really solidifies its chances at a very good shot of a Best Picture nominee. Now, in terms of falling, the big one that I've sort of been saying for a while, but this really sort of tells us that it's falling, is First Man. Didn't get in for Ryan Gosling for First Man, even though the Golden Globes love their stars. Didn't get in for director. Didn't get in for best film drama. Got in for score, but we really only got, I think, score and Claire Foy. So First Man, unfortunately, was shut out here. I think that has to do with the box office performance. I think the decline of that movie is falling pretty quickly. Cinematography could be next. These tech categories, I think it'll still do well in those categories, but they could be falling, especially if now I don't even think it's going to get a Best Picture nomination. I think Damien Chazelle's chances for Best Director are increased heavily, and I think overall, this is not good news for First Man. Another movie that's not good news for is First Reformed. Ethan Hawke did not get in, surprisingly, which I thought, maybe his momentum would build. I still have them in my predictions for the Oscars because I think the critics groups could still help him out, even though I was hoping for this Globes nomination. And then it also lost in screenplay, which we were talking about last week. Original screenplay was 8th grade, was it First Reformed. First Reformed winning those critics groups, but then it didn't even get nominated here. Now, do note that this is one screenplay category, whereas there's original and adapted in the Oscars and other critics groups. So First Reformed is still, I hoped maybe it would get in for screenplay. It didn't, but I think the big thing here for First Reformed that hurts it is Ethan Hawke getting in. But of the sort of the big ones, the Romas, the Favorites, the Green Books, the Star Borns, none of them are falling super bad. I mean, they did either overperformed or performed about what we thought. Star Born maybe underperformed, but it's going to win a lot of awards, I think. So that's going to help it out. And then some of these late contenders like Vice, like Mary Poppins Returns, and an early contender like Black Klansman, all sort of solidifying that they're still in the race, that they still have chances. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the Golden Globes and how they affect the Oscars. Let's just jump into my first pick for Adapted Screenplay. We'll do these a little quickly than normal, just so we can make sure get that quality video out. This is just If Beale Street Can Talk from Barry Jenkins. If you don't know, this is based on a novel. He's adapting from a novel by James Baldwin, who, if you don't know, recently it was a documentary which was nominated for an Oscar, I think, or in the awards circuit. No, it was nominated for an Oscar. I'm Not Your Negro. That's about James Baldwin and based on a book about his writings. So he's been in sort of the consciousness. So the Academy definitely knows about him. And I think that Barry Jenkins is a great screenwriter. It's a scenario where there's a great writer combined with a great writer himself. So the great novelist, great screenplay writer, and Barry Jenkins and James Baldwin coming together to make this really beautiful movie. I saw this movie at TIFF, I also saw Moonlight at TIFF, and you can really understand why Barry Jenkins did well, because he really is great at selling his movie and selling the themes and the understanding and sort of the struggle he has behind it. He loves James Baldwin. He'll talk to you all day about him. So that really helps him in terms of getting that Adapted Screenplay nomination, because it is based on sort of not a famous book, but a book from a well-regarded author. and then someone who really cares about him and wants to talk about him more really just helps the idea of adapting that screenplay really well. And he's really great at selling it, the idea how Moonlight was the family he grew up with, but this is the family he wished he grew up with. Just that sort of theme that he tackles, he talks about really well, and he really eloquently say his thoughts. Then number 2 here, I have A Star Is Born by Bradley Cooper, Will Ferrell, and Eric Roth. Now, all these nominations afterwards didn't get nominated at the Globes because, like I said, they had that screenplay category and not adapted screenplay. If Beale Street Could Talk was the only one that got nominated at the Globes, but I'm not too worried about that because I did think actually A Star Is Born might get in there. Even though it didn't, though, it still did well at the Globes, like I said, and I think it's going to get in at the Oscars because of the strength of the movie, and also because someone like Eric Roth has a lot of pedigree, even though it's kind of it's a drama, but it could be kind of seen as a musical. I think someone like Eric Roth, who is a well-respected screenwriter, he won for Forrest Gump, he's been nominated 4 times at the Oscars. He's seen as someone who really brings a lot of class and weight to the script. So even though I had some problems actually with some of the writing, just because I had some problems with the movie, I think that the very beginning scene, the date scene, the dialogue, and how that sort of crescendos and builds to the shallow moment is a great piece of structural writing, how the events sort of flow into one another, into this great sort of epic moment that I almost want the movie to end there, and then it sort of went on and I had problems afterwards, but the sort of real honest moments between Bradley and Lady Gaga were really genuine and heartfelt and well written, I think, and I think the Academy will like this movie and therefore nominate it as screenplay. But if it does get in that screenplay, that's a major hit against its Best Picture chances. Alright, Black Klansman. This is from Spike Lee, Charlie Whittel, David Rabinowitz, and Kevin Wilmot. This is an interesting one because I enjoyed the sort of the political movie that it was, entertaining movie, the latest Spike Lee joint. I enjoyed it, and even though there's been so many negative things going against Spike Lee, he's always done well in the screenplay category. You know, even got nominated for Do the Right Thing way back when, so he's definitely, at least at the very least, seen as a screenplay writer, a great one. So I think Black Klansman will get in because of how its sort of use of comedy and entertainment with sort of serious anger issues, that sort of the anger sort of fieriness that Spike Lee brings to a lot of his films, and really that sort of duality between there's certain moments where they're almost comparing the divide in the KKK members speaking, and then sort of the black union members speaking, the students' union there, and then sort of John J. Washington's character sort of stuck in the middle of it all. I thought it was well done, and I thought people would sort of see those metaphors a lot more than something that's a little more, subtle, because Spike Lee's not necessarily a subtle filmmaker. He wants to let you know the message. He's telling you his message. I think a lot of people will respect that. Last thought here is Can You Ever Forgive Me? Nicole Holofcener and Jeff Whitty. She there is a director, Nicole. She directed Land of Steady Habits and Enough Said. She was supposed to direct this movie with Julianne Moore, actually, then dropped out at the last minute. So she wrote the screenplay, and I think that even though this movie's kind of falling, unfortunately, it's still getting in everywhere it needs to get it in. I still think it can get in for this category because of the strength of Richard E. Grant and Melissa McCarthy, 2 actors that have been getting in. Even at the Globes, they got in. I can see a surprise upset for Richard E. Grant even winning at the Globes. That's a possibility. I still sort of believe in the strength of this movie, and I think that this will get in for a nomination because as we get more into the adapted screenplay, as we do most years, it is getting a little weak, and it's sort of like especially my honorable mentions, it's just like a splatter of a wall. It could be any of these, but I'm pretty confident in my top 5. And really, this movie is great because of that banter, because of that back and forth. There's a really great monologue that Melissa McCarthy delivers that's really well written at the end, and just that sort of coy, timed perfectly kind of dialogue between the two is the standout for this movie. And when you think of this movie, you think of the performances, you think of the fun back and forth, the dialogue, and you think of the screenplay. So I think that's what's going to get in for screenplay. And then Black Panther, here we have Ryan Coogler and Joe Robert Cole. This one maybe is a surprise, but I think with its nomination as Best Film Drama, which is sort of the big stepping stone for at the Globes, it could be on its way to Best Picture. There are a lot of things that need to happen, of course, but it has a very good shot, I think, especially with the sort of backlash and against the Best Popular Picture, with the, they're coming down to choose popular pictures. Not only do I think is Black Panther's going to get in for Best Picture, it could get in for Best Director, and it definitely needs to, if it has any chance to win, it needs to get in for Best Adapted Screenplay. Plus, you look at something like Logan, which was a comic book movie, also got nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay last year, so they're not necessarily against comic book movies in this category. And really, it's similar to something like Arrival or Get Out, where it elevates the genre. Get Out wasn't a horror movie; it talked about race and other themes. And this is not necessarily just a superhero movie. Once again, it talks about race and sort of coming back home to a place you don't feel belonged. You don't feel like you belong. There's really some overall really dramatic themes that rise above the superhero genre and can relate to a lot of different people as just this sort of movie that is a superhero movie, yes, but explores a lot of these different types of themes. So I think that's why it gets it in at this slot. And then quickly, just some honorable mentions. First Man, it hasn't been doing that well, so it could get in, but I think a lot of the problems with the movie is people have Justin Singer, who is the screenwriter, who's Oscar-winning screenwriter, wrote The Post, which he got. No, he did not get nominated for. He got one for Spotlight, did not get nominated for The Post. And then here, I don't think he's going to get nominated just because the people's problems with the movie are the sort of emotional dissonance of the characters. They're not going to get it. Crazy Rich Asians here did well at the Globes, but I just don't think it could get it in. It could, I guess, because it's a well-respected book. Death of Stalin, very funny. I think people forgot about it. Wildlife, one of my favorite movies of the year. Really hope that gets in because of sort of Paul Dano and his ability to adapt this book. Wildfire, who I'm forgetting about unfortunately. Boy Erased, which did well with Lucas Hedges at the Globes, but Nicole Kidman didn't get in for Best Supporting Actress, but she got in for Best Actress for Destroyer, so take that as you will. And then Widows, which is doing pretty poorly at the box office, so I see that one falling, unfortunately. So really these are movies that are falling or have been heard of, but I really feel strongly in my 5. I'm probably not going to change them unless something drastic happens, so keep an eye on those. I think that the Adapted Screenplay category is pretty close to a lock, especially for something like A Star is Born or Black Klansman or If Beale Street Could Talk. I think those ones are solids, but if something doesn't happen and something does sneak in, that will change the race a lot for sure. So stay tuned for that. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the Globes. What were your favorite nominations? Personal ones. What were the ones you were surprised got snubs? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear that kind of stuff. And until next time, stay tuned.